everyone. Well, I'm back from a working trip, which means it's time for a video about the results of the European Championship. We stopped at the all-around, so we'll talk about it today. How did the 24 best gymnasts perform? Let's talk about each one of them. What new scandals were after the all-around? And in general, we will discuss a lot of interesting things. And by tradition, do not forget to subscribe to the channel to keep yourself updated on all the gymnastics news. And if you want to be the first to know everything about it, I'm waiting for you in the Telegram channel. Well, using the links in the description, you can support what I do with donations. Many thanks in advance. So, the biggest scandal associated with the fourth day on the European Championship, as well as with the all-around, was connected with the victory of the Israeli gymnast Daria Atamanov. It was she who won the gold, given that after the qualification, she was only fourth. Then, of course, this was a big reason for discussion. In general, many scandals have recently been associated with Israel. And here, either the gymnasts really figured out the system of how to win, or they know who to approach in order to win. But we, as viewers, can only evaluate from the outside, and more often we can only guess about what the inner kitchen is, or discuss the information from those who convey it. But in such cases, you should always remember that in every conflict there are two sides, and each has its own truth. So Daria Atamanov, an Israeli gymnast, became the absolute champion of Europe. In general, Dasha went through her routines very confidently and well. The only big mistake that she made was a fall in the ribbon. Otherwise, everything was performed at a high level, very high speed and execution, which shows that she can really gain high difficulty. The routines are very interesting. It is a pleasure to watch them. At least I really like Dasha. And I think here her victory is more in the format of that her home walls helped her, and not the judges, as many may think. Still, Dasha often suffers from instability and allows losses, but here is a relatively clean performance, and accordingly a reward for it. Well, when compared with her rivals who could overtake her, they made mistakes, and that cost them much more. When I first found out about the results, I honestly was very surprised and thought that maybe something was messed up here. But looking at it in general, everything was fair for me. Of course, if you do not discuss artisticity, to which I think a new video should be made. Boryana Kalein won the silver medal, and here mistakes were made in the all-around, which did not allow her to rise any higher on the podium. But as Boryana said in the interview after, is that it's the most important that she performed here and that she recovered from her injury. So there were small errors in the performance with the ribbon. There was a loss in the ball, and in the clubs there was a loss at the end of the routine. And also in the hoop, there was a moment when Boryana caught the hoop, but the partist touched the floor first. That is, it seems like a mistake. But the question was whether this touch was visible for the judges or not. Watching Boryana's performances, I realized that she has very cool and unusual routines. Not just routines, but direct performances. And I think it is really valuable that there are gymnasts who show something in a different level, and not just a set of elements to the music. Stiliana Nikolova is another Bulgarian gymnast who won bronze, probably the only gymnast who remained in her place after the qualification. Discussing her mistakes, there was an expensive loss made in the ribbon, and in the clubs there was a very unpleasant fall in which she lost her balance and collapsed on the turn. And that moment I was very scared that she would break her neck, but everything seemed to work out. I know that many have mixed feelings for Stiliana because she looks still very young, but competes with visually older girls. But personally, this does not bother me, but rather captivates me because Stiliana shows interesting and unique things in her confidence and emotionality. Sofia Raffaeli and fourth place are the most offensive, given that many expected gold from her, but here they didn't even manage to earn a podium. But in terms of performance, the all-around really didn't go so straight. So in the clubs there was a loss at the end. As a result, there was no final point. In the ribbon at the beginning, she seemed to slip, and it seems to me, or have we already seen this? Maybe that's how it's meant to be. A very strange moment happened in the ribbon when she was ending her element. She seems to have fallen, but if she pretended it was necessary. Perhaps in the dynamics of this it was not so visible, but it caught my eye. Well, in the hoop, there was that very terrible loss for which I said that I was constantly afraid for. As a result, the final in the hoop also did not work out. And in general, I think it is obvious why Sofia could not climb onto the podium. By the way, one more interesting moment about those who were in the gym and were a primary source for me. So in the all-around, they turned off the air conditioning so that the ribbons would not be blown away. However, during Sofia's performance with the ribbon, the wind blew in the hall, which was noticeable by the flags right next to the ceiling. The Italians seemed to go and argue with the organizers, but those had no answer and they said it was just an accident. Do you think it is really an accident, or did the desire to win have an advantage over justice? Write in the comments what you think about this. Of course, I want to believe that this is an accident, but I do not exclude the second option. Daria Varfolomeev, a German gymnast, took 5th place, and here I think it is just the beginning for Dasha. And next season she will also not regret her scores that she received now. And this was the case with Sofia Raffaeli. Now Dasha is earning her rating and is doing very well. So she passed all 4 routines without big errors, and I'm sure that with each start Dasha has more and more fans. She is very pleasant in not terms of only texture and emotions. The only thing I would like from her is more variety in her routines. Ekaterina Vedeneeva, a Slovenian gymnast, took 6th place. According to her performances, the ribbon was a little dirty and there was a loss made in the risk. Katya went through all the rest of her routines very cleanly. Following Katya was the Italian gymnast Milena Baldassari. Milena passed all her 4 routines without big mistakes. There were minor bluffs, but in general she managed to do the all-around, although she did not manage to climb very high. Victoria Priyanko, the gymnast from Ukraine, took 8th place. She didn't manage to get through her routine cleanly enough, which means that there is definitely more to come. So there was a slight loss in the hoop at the end. By the way, I really like this exercise, especially the selection of music. There was also a slight loss in the clubs without a travel and an entanglement in the ribbon. Zohra Aghamirova, an Azerbaijani gymnast, won 9th place. She competed all 4 programs without visible errors, while I especially like the ball, original music, and similar minimalistic leotards for all her routines. How they joke on it in fan circles that everything they save on leotard stones is spent on protests. Although this European Championship as a whole has become very popular on protests, also a topic for a long conversation. But in short, I think the problem is that many people at home consider the difficulty, but when speaking to the judges do not consider something, and accordingly, it turns out that the coaches think that the gymnasts are not given something. But to be honest about the difficulty, at least it seems to me that's the point. The problem is that the rules have changed and still some people think that one thing may count and the others have a different opinion. So some judges might have seen a seminar where it was clearly told that this element won't count, and other judges missed this information. After all, even in the last Olympic season, there were such things that the girls did what they discussed and at referee seminars, and they said that this was not valid as a skill. Arzu Jalilova, another Azerbaijani gymnast, rounded out the top 10. In the hoop, she had a very dangerous moment where the hoop slightly hit her legs, and as a result, the catch was made but not as it was planned. I'm wondering how the judges think of such moments, because it's obvious that this was a mistake. But in theory, the gymnast was lucky and did not drop the object. Well, I really like the exercise with the ball, and for the clubs, the leotard is just beautiful. Asya Katz, the Israeli gymnast, took 11th place. She also had expectations for higher places, but in almost every routine, she made a mistake. Although before the European Championship, it was still a question of who was the leader in the Israeli team, given that Asya Katz performed more often in tournaments. Many thought it was her, but in the end, a big loss was made in the hoop, as well as a strange moment when she entered her element. There were 2 losses and failed elements in the ball, and there was a loss in the clubs. Elizaveta Polstyanaya, a Latvian gymnast, took 12th place. What I remember most of all is that the shots of her coach's joy. Coming back to the performance, there was a loss in the hoop at the end, and there was also an entanglement in the ribbon. Helen Carbonov, representing France, finished 13th. She is remembered for her performance in the nominal element of Sofia Raffaeli. Well, she's very pretty on her own, right? I especially like the music in the ribbon and the leotard with the straight buzz. In terms of execution, all 4 routines were relatively clean. Fanny Pigninski, a Hungarian gymnast, became 14th. With a loss in the clubs. I really like the ball and the ribbon, and in general I noticed that her routines are very well set. All movements flow directly from one to another. Margarita Kolosov, a German gymnast, I associate with power and confidence. I especially like her ball. Not everything I would say was successful in execution. There was a loss in the ribbon in the end, and the stick was knocked out from the leg. As a result, the risk was not counted. By the way, I also thought that Rita would be higher in her ranking. Litra Panagiota, a Greek gymnast, placed 16th. In terms of execution, she passed all her 4 routines cleanly and stably. I especially like that exercise with the ball, a very interesting leotard with green leads on top. A Spanish gymnast, Alba Batusta, took 17th place. I especially remember the interesting beginning in the ribbon and insanely beautiful leotards. In clubs, it's unrealistically cool. According to the performance with the clubs, a loss was made out of the carpet, as well as a loss in the ribbon. Otherwise, no big errors. I remember Hanna Panna Weisner, a Hungarian gymnast, for her plasticity. I really like the ball. It seems to me that she is especially well revealed in it. Well, her bundle is always special. In execution, there was a loss in the hoop and also a small loss in the clubs. Andrea Verdes, a Romanian gymnast, placed 19th. I really like her unusual leotard for the clubs and in general the exercise. There are many minor shortcomings in her performance and a loss in the ribbon. In my opinion, last season Andrea looked more confident. Either she didn't turn her programs well enough yet, or these rules are difficult for her. Andrea Verdes, the Romanian gymnast, and she rounded up the top 20. According to the execution, the element in the ribbon was not performed very well. There was a moment where she made a loss in the hoop and the part just flew out of the carpet. She took a spare, and eventually the first one returned to the carpet. Sad but true, but she did not get rid of it, and according to the rules, she is punished if there is an extra apparatus on the carpet. Honestly, I was a little surprised that a gymnast of such level is not aware of this, but in general, it probably happens. I especially like the smile of Anais, and it seems to me that it is somehow contagious and sincere. Melanie Keller, an Estonian gymnast, placed 21st. I especially like the music under the ball. It definitely attracted more attention and stood out from the rest. According to the performance, there was a loss in the hoop. Ketevan Arbolishvili, the Georgian gymnast, made a loss in the clubs, but in the rest, she passed without many mistakes, although there was dirt on some little things. According to my memory, I really like the combination of the leotard and the object in the ball. It seems to be something very unusual. And of course, Salome Pashava being her coach. Polina Berezina, a gymnast from Spain, attracted my attention with her muscular arms, which everyone probably admires. Well, and that incredibly beautiful leotard. My favorite for the clubs. There was a slight loss in the clubs and quite a lot of dirt in the ribbon. Well, I also really like the exercise with the hoop, and it seemed to me very interesting and cool. While our top 24 was closed by a French gymnast, Litra Panagiota, she made a loss in the hoop and in the clubs as well as in the ribbon, so unfortunately it was not possible for her to show her maximum. Well, Lily has made it to the top 24, and I think this is really cool. For cool things, her leotard in the ball attracted me the most. It seemed to be so simple, but looks very cool on the carpet. Write in the comments who you remember the most from the top 24 gymnasts on the European Championship. And we will see you in the next video. Bye bye.